This episode brought to you by
GTM AI Academy. Learn AI from a globally trusted resource. Coach K, Jonathan Carfort. Their bundle, Enablement AI Mastery, includes both the core Generative AI Foundations course and Enablement AI Mastery specifically. Each course has a value of $599 individually, but Coach K is offering them as a bundle with reduced pricing. And as a listener of the Inside Sales Enablement podcast, if you act now, you can use code ISE30 to get an additional 30% off of the entire thing. You will also receive free access to the GTM AI Tools demo library. Coach K has done the demos, so you don't have to, and offers his straight shooting opinion, fact-based through an enablement lens. Go to www.gtmaiacademy.com and enter code ISE30 today and elevate your AI enablement game.
Welcome to the Inside Sales Enablement podcast. Where has the profession been? Where is it now? And where is it heading? What does it mean to you, your company, other functions, the market? Find out here. Join the founding father of the sales enablement profession, Scott Santucci, and Trailblazer Brian Lambert as they take you behind the scenes of the birth of an industry. The Inside Sales Enablement podcast starts now.
I'm Scott Santucci.
I'm Brian Lambert, and we are the Sales Enablement Insiders.
Hello, Insider Nation. We're excited to bring you yet another star-studded panel. This time, it's of your peers and part of our continuing State of Sales Enablement project. We here at Inside Sales Enablement are dedicated to making sure our listeners are successful, overcoming the complexities in their own companies so that they compete more effectively in the market. There are many names used to describe what I just said. We've been calling it sales enablement for the last 12 years. COVID was a wake-up call for Brian and I, and hopefully it was for all of the rest of you in Insider Nation. Woo! And we answered that call first by launching an amazing, absolutely amazing, if you haven't had a chance to listen to, you need to listen to it, our COVID panel, which we broke down into 5 parts because it was so rich. On that, we had Dr. Howard Dover from the University of Texas, Dallas. We had Kunal Mehta, who's a partner at TCV Private Equity, and Lindsay Gore, one of the top reps at Microsoft, and we had her on to keep us honest. So we don't go veer off into theoretical land. Something Kunal shared with us in part 2, you should go listen to that episode, really caught our attention. He was talking about the growing gap between what investors want to see and how poorly the sum of the parts in the commercial process, sales and marketing, are, and that this alignment or this connective tissue isn't happening. Kunal mentioned that was the responsibility of sales enablement, and they don't see it anywhere happening in any of their portfolio companies. So that was a big wake-up call, and I thought, geez, we need to investigate that further. So we launched a survey to get the feedback from sales enablement practitioners, and we challenged you, Insider Nation, to help us out. We thought, hey, we're going to ask open-ended questions. We're going to get a lot of subjective feedback so that we can piece together what's really happening. We thought that if we got 25 responses, that would be enough or suitable to give us a really good perspective. So we challenged you guys, and we said, hey, if we want to get 25, we need to set our quota, like I guess your companies do to your salespeople, at 50. So, okay, we're going to go out and get 50. How did you respond, Insider Nation? Did you give us 30? Did you give us 50? No, in 1 week time, you gave us 70 responses. 70! That's incredible. So thank you so much. We're very grateful for your participation. But that creates a different kind of problem. It's a high quality problem, but a problem nonetheless. How do you analyze open-ended feedback from 70 people who all are incredibly thoughtful? The responses were really, really thoughtful. So the other thing too is when you look at that information, I don't want to insert my bias. So all of us have bias. We have a fake news problem in business too. So please, side note, if you take any study and use the statistics, please read the methodology that they followed. Please, there is so much fake news out there. It's really distracting, but I digress. One of the things that we wanted to do is make sure that we don't have enough bias that we put onto it. So we've highlighted and recruited over 30 thought leader experts like the people that we have here to help us figure it out. As part of that program, we want to be able to give you insights or a glimpse at how this information is being combined. So we're running these panels. Our first panel, we had sales enablement experts. So I'm sure you know, if you've been in the space, Tamara Shank, Mike Kunkel, and Josie Mashburn. We had a fantastic panel there. We just put out our second one was with sales leaders. So if you know Skip Miller, so it's great that, Sheevaun mentioned that Skip Miller is a client that is fantastic. It's Skip Miller, Steve Capro, and we also had Bob Apollo. So we just completed that. And now we're pulling up and having perspective from practitioners. All of this is leading forward. Mark your calendars for May 19th. Go visit insidese.com to register, because on May 19th, we're producing a findings presentation for where all of this sits. So now let's kick off our panel. I'm really excited. So this is a panel of people that I've known for quite a long time. We have, I'm going to introduce them first and have them introduce themselves to you. The first person is Doug Clower. Doug I met through inquiries. I think our first time that we actually met was when you were at NetIQ, and we were doing a briefing of the executive buyer research that we'd done when we were at Forrester. He's worked at Novell, NetIQ, and most recently at MicroFocus. Doug has been pretty heavily involved in, I would say, a little bit more focused on the content side of things rather than the training side of things. And I'm very excited to have Doug participating with us. Doug, would you care to introduce yourself to Insider Nation?
Yes, thanks. Thanks for that, Scott. Doug Clower, obviously. I've been around sales enablement for a long time. I have a rather unique background. I did not come to sales enablement in high tech through what some people might think is the normal business channel. I grew up, my degree is in architecture. So I practiced architecture for 15 years before I moved over to technology. I'm passionate really about enabling a sales force to make a difference with customers, because ultimately what we're trying to do in the sales enablement field is help our salespeople solve problems that our customers have. That's really the approach I take.
Excellent. So that's Doug. Next up is Sheevaun Thatcher. So Sheevaun and I met, I don't even know exactly when. maybe it was at that first conference, Sheevaun, but we met at Forrester, and I've just had many interactions and sessions with her, whether it be through an analyst or the like. She also was at the very first the founding meeting. So when the Sales Enablement Society was forming, Jim Ninavaji and I did a I don't know what it was, right? A workshop, I guess. Group therapy session, whatever that was. We had a meeting of about 18 of us in some hotel out in California, and Sheevaun was there. And right then and there, that was when the chapter, the San Francisco chapter, was born. So Sheevaun has been very heavily involved in helping get this profession off the ground for quite some time. As you know, she's a leader out there in the Sales Enablement Society and in the community. So I'm incredibly honored to have Sheevaun join us. Sheevaun, introduce yourself to the few people who don't know you yet.
Hi, Sheevaun Thatcher. I do definitely have a passion and a purpose around sales enablement. I did come up the more traditional business way. I came up through sales, then pre-sales, then over to the enablement side of it. And so it was a great path for me, and it was the right way to go. Scott, you and I met at the very first Forrester conference, and you asked how many people in the room had the title of enablement. And there were about 100 people in the room, and 4 of us stood up, and that was it. I mean, and that's how long ago that was. And then, out in Palm Beach, wherever we were, and then here in the Bay Area. So it's been, I've seen the growth, like you, from virtually nothing to now there are 10,000, 15,000 people that can really, really say that they're true sales enablement folks.
Yeah, it's been a long journey, huh?
Yeah, great one though. Great one.
Yes, very exciting. And then last but not least, we have Imogen McCourt. Imogen McCourt and I met while at Forrester. So bear with me, this is going to be a little bit complicated, but this is all true. This is how things work out in real life, right? It's not that linear. So Imogen had this gigantic, and I'm being sarcastic, department at Forrester, helping the Forrester sales reps with sales enablement. At the same time, we launched the sales enablement practice for Forrester to provide research to clients. So I guess it's almost like we didn't want to be the cobbler's son that had no shoes, right? Right, Imogen? And so Imogen worked with, I mentioned Skip Miller. So Skip Miller was somebody that Imogen and Greg hired to help the sales force. And so this is sort of the weird triangle of Skip and Imogen and Scott. So, and then we also invited Imogen to participate, and she was a client of our Sales Enablement Leadership Council that was for clients. Okay, did that make any sense, Imogen? Introduce yourself to Insider Nation. Oh, I forgot. Oh my gosh, I forgot another thing. Imogen also was at that founding meeting to kick off. That was a great meeting, by the way, for London. Side note, the London meeting started out at the wrong address. Remember that? It was so... And then people had to go find the right address, but still 45 people showed up. It was incredible. Imogen, did I get anything right? Can you help me make me not sound insane?
Yes, hello. Thank you, Scott. I'm Imogen McCourt, and it was that complicated. I had been with Forrester for some time, and there was sort of broad and interesting history of that. The best bit was obviously getting into sales enablement at the same time as you were there building the practice out. And just to add extra complexity, Forrester also decided to do a global sales transformation and different go-to-market approach at the same time. So I landed this global role, skeleton staff, and of course Skip Miller coming in to support us, and then had to support the sales organization through that transformation and try and be the best I could possibly be, Scott, to live up to the very high standards that you and the team were giving. So thank goodness you were all around to support me through that process. And you know, that pedaling in the deep end piece really helps, right? You really learn at speed when you go through that sort of process quickly, and it's been fantastic to be able to continue to do that, and to do that in Europe. And I know we're going to talk about this later, but I think the environment in Europe is different to the one that I experienced working for Forrester and leading things from the US as well as Europe.
Yeah, so I like that pedaling in the deep end, and I think that's why you have to have people getting your back. Right, because a lot of this stuff is you just have to have people that'll support you, that you can talk through it, and also it doesn't help or it doesn't hurt to have tequila, right, Imogen?
Tequila always helps.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, having said that, we're now going to go to the meat of our show. So the meat of our show, if you've been following along, this is our third panel, and we have 3 standard questions. So the first question, and again, just to set our audience's expectations, every single one of these analysts has had the opportunity to look at the 70 responses, open-ended responses. And by the way, that's not an easy task. It's not just data. It's a lot of open-ended feedback. So it takes some work to do the analysis. I've interviewed each of them too, so we've had a chance to talk about it. So question number 1, and I'm going to ask you, Doug, having looked at the survey findings, what are a few things that stood out for you?
Well, Scott, I thought it was really interesting, the paradox between strategy that different individuals were taking and their titles. So I saw a lot of titles associated with what we would consider a sales enablement leader, you know, those people that were leading a department, doing their thing, and they were approaching sales enablement as an operational excellence kind of approach, which seems, and it's sort of an inference on my part, it seems a little bit more like it's a tactical execution as opposed to the innovation answer to that particular question, the business strategy question. Because what I think in sales enablement we have to do, especially as you underline the idea of COVID-19, we have really got to be more innovative. We have to be thinking on our feet, more what I would call startup, or a very nimble organization being able to respond to the circumstances that our sales force is facing on a daily basis and the environment that we're working in, whatever it happens to be. So I guess if I looked at it, there was a bit of a discord between what I thought a sales enablement leader should be thinking about, what their priorities were or their strategy was, and what their actual strategy was.
Excellent. Thank you, Doug. Sheevaun, how about you? What were some of your reactions?
I would echo what Doug said, but I think the other thing that I did find gratifying was that the majority of the folks do, in fact, believe and are bullish on sales enablement and believe it's on the rise. There's been a lot of buzz going around that I've heard, a lot of negative around enablement for the last few months. It's interesting. I haven't heard it before then, that enablement's not working. And I get a sense, especially looking at some of the answers of the folks that don't think it's working, that a lot of that just has to do with tactical versus strategy. The same thing Doug said, that if you take much more of a strategic corporate view of it, and how do you actually help move the business forward, as opposed to how do I make sure I've got these courses running? It's just, I think it's just the vision that folks have on what enablement can be, that they've restricted themselves. And when you restrict themselves, then you don't give yourself the runway to do what needs to be done.
Awesome. Imogen.
Yeah, I mean, as you might suspect, I echo what both Doug and Sheevaun say, but I also think that for me, it was almost gratifying to see people talking about the fact that they see sales enablement on the rise because of the complexity of doing business nowadays. It's like we've always been, I think you coined the phrase the VP of broken things, and we've always been that person brought in to fix things that weren't aligned or weren't working. And it really seemed to echo in the people who thought we were on the rise, that sales enablement was really getting more focus, that it was because there's so much out there that needs to be sorted out. And we can't do that tactically one bit at a time because it's too complex. We have to go simple, and we have to think strategically so people can see the big picture of how sales enablement really impacts a company's ability to drive and grow profitably.
So, Doug, how do you respond? What are your takeaways from what you heard from Sheevaun and Imogen?
Well, the one thing that Sheevaun talked about was, enablement is broken. And I think what happens is we get these little courses, things aren't quite working the way they should be. Sales isn't quite hitting a number, or something's happening here. Or in some respects, maybe it's marketing that is failing to see that what their message is a little different than what the salesperson's message is, because it's a broad story as opposed to a focused story to the customer. And so when I echo the fact that we hear a lot of sales enablement's broken when it's not really sales enablement. It's a matter of somebody thinks what they have to say is more important than what sales enablement is doing, to that extent. Now that's just a little bit of an odd takeaway on that, but it's really important for us to make sure that everybody understands it's a collaborative effort. Nobody's saying marketing's doing the wrong thing or sales is doing the wrong thing. It's here's the things we should be doing differently because of what our message happens to be. So I would echo what Sheevaun said.
Sheevaun, what did you get from Doug and Imogen?
We're all pretty much saying the same thing. I think is that enablement does work when everybody is looking in the same direction. I think the disconnect between marketing and sales is the fact that each believes that they're doing a better job than the other to get the customer's attention, where in fact we're all trying to do the same thing, which is to help our customers buy from us. And it's getting folks to put that siloism, new word, siloism aside, and say that together, if you work together on this, sales and marketing. In fact, I see enablement doing that a lot, is bringing those two sides together to say there is a quid pro quo, right? Marketing, you give sales content in the way that they can use it, and sales, you make sure or ask marketing and give marketing back adoption and rock and roll, right? So it's everybody's trying to do the right thing, and it's giving them the opportunity to do the right thing through conversation and training, right? You can teach each other.
I like that. Imogen.
Oh yeah, I like that too. That's really good. We teach each other. That's the collaborative nature of what we're trying to do as sales enablement.
Yeah, and I would go further than that as well. We can provide the feedback loop for them. So, in my last in-house position, I owned the sales operations group as well, and also customer success, as it happens. And so that gave me all the feedback loops. I could provide what the clients were actually saying and how they were reacting to it, and we could see how things were mobilizing and moving along the sales process, whether it's resonating with buyers. So, I think this idea of collaborating is absolutely spot on. We're more than the sum of our parts, and we can help reflect that in data and feedback that's real from the client.
So you use the word feedback. Sheevaun and Doug, you use the word teach each other. Are those the same idea, or are they different? Is feedback?
I think feedback feeds the outbound. It's a loop. It's a continuous loop. It never stops. People say to me all the time, is your sales enablement finished? I'm like, it never stops. It never stops. There's always some learning. There's always some new feedback. As enablers, we have to make sure we ask for and get the feedback, right? Sometimes it just rolls around out there and you never hear anything. But once you get it, then I think it is part of what feeds the outbound and where the company goes.
That's spot on, Sheevaun, because Scott, to your question that you just posed, is it feedback and teaching the same thing? It's no, that they are the circular loop that Sheevaun just talked about, because somebody gets feedback from sales that this message doesn't seem to resonate. We learn that. We can share that, teach that, if you want to call it that, share that with marketing. Marketing says, well, why? And let's modify it. Then we go back out and test that. That feedback teaching loop is really very important part of what enablement does. I have a way of looking at way I see things usually in technology is there's a product group, a marketing group, and the sales group, and it's trying to get those three to work together, which is so important. And that's Sheevaun, you're right on.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to tease out, and I'm going to ask this for Imogen to react to it. What I'm trying to tease out here is been my observation. So first of all, clarifier. Do either of you three have a formal professional learning background?
No.
Imogen?
No.
So part of the observation that I've seen is sometimes people who have a professional learning background think about teaching one way. It's, I will do instruction, I will teach you, we are there to teach you, rather than to learn from each other. It's not bidirectional. And the reason that I asked the question about feedback loop, Imogen, you and I both worked under a regime at Forrester that was heavy on the data side, low on the insight side. And feedback can get interpreted as just data. And you have to be able to learn to be able to put that data in context. So the reason I'm asking this is what's unique about all three of you is none of you came from a traditional learning background. All of you put a high degree of value of learning, but your perspective of learning is bidirectional, not one way. And then the second thing, Imogen, I think you're in a unique spot to do. Having worked in a data-driven research company, the word feedback has a lot of different meaning to you. So I want to give you some opportunity to give some texture about what you mean by feedback.
Yeah, so I think if I was going to broaden out my definition of feedback, it's about this continuous understanding of what effect you're having or what impact you're having towards an outcome.
Yes.
So it can be very exposing, right? So if I go to my marketing department and say, those amazing series of webinars that you crafted, nobody's listening, nobody's interested, that would be awful. But if I can say to them, this isn't necessarily accelerating the sales process in the way that we want it to, and I can show you that, but we think that we'd really like you to try this, or we'd like to work together to do that. What would be beneficial for you to ask the commercial organisation to do to try that out? And then we can start to do some really interesting learning together, finding that mutual benefit to move forward what the marketing teams are trying to do or the product heads are trying to do, that really drives forward, not into an abyss or a black hole if they've chucked it over the fence into the commercial team, and they're hoping for the best. But they've actually understood that sales enablement will help partner that to see whether it is having impact that they're hoping it will. So I think that is how I would broaden out feedback in this context.
Excellent. So what we're looking at then is I'm going to put words in everybody's mouth. Obviously, the goal is to get to a statement that we all agree with. So if my words aren't the right ones, amend them so that we have something that we can agree on. But it seems like across the board there's some vocabulary that doesn't exist today for the people who haven't been through the ringer like you guys have had. So one concept is it's two-way learning, not one-way learning. And the other concept is feedback is important, data is important, but put the data in context with the lens of what's working, not so much just data for data's sake. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair.
I think it's a very fair summation of it.
Excellent. So I think these things are important because what's interesting is we keep talking about strategic or tactical. I don't think that has enough context. And I think what you guys have all done is unconsciously, you've tapped into your unconscious competence, but arrived at the same phenomenon, is where you're blending things. You all talk about the need to blend or align cross-functional groups. You talk about bi-directional learning. Learning's a two-way street. I can learn from Sheevaun. Sheevaun can learn from me. Together, we both thrive. That's a positive feedback loop. And then, Imogen, to your point, feedback isn't just data. Data is just a measure. There's other things about it that you have to contextualize, and you have to have a purpose of why that data is. And it sounds like, Imogen, over the years, you've gotten really focused on figuring out what that purpose is and helping executives see the meaning in the data so that they can contextualize the feedback.
And I guess the other thing I would add to that is that when you do deliver the data, you have to deliver it in the language of the people that are receiving.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I completely agree. And what level of the organization as well.
Excellent. Awesome. That's exciting. So now we're on to question number 2. Question number 2 is, what was your favorite question of the survey and why? So the first person that gets to answer this one is you, Sheevaun. What was your favorite question? Why?
Oh, that's easy. My favorite question was, if enablement were a business, what business would it be? Because it's funny, because it actually goes to what we were just talking about, which is how can you take sales enablement and describe it in a way that people can understand it through a set of metaphors, for example. So the thing that came to mind immediately to me was mission control, right? That we all have our headsets on. We're all listening to the various parts of how to make this rocket ship take off. And then we're bringing them all together in a coordinated fashion to make sure that we get off the ground. And so doing that concept of mission control, you think about filing a flight plan. You think about registering the flight plan with your leadership. You think about the different types of flight plans. Some people like, I'm impatient. I want to get from here to the moon in a direct shot, right? Or here to New York in a direct shot, where somebody else may want to take a skip and a hop through Dallas or Chicago or whatnot. We're still getting to the same destination. We're just choosing our own path to get there. So as enablement folks, I really do see us as, mission control to help the company go in the right direction. And so you don't have those, misfiring rockets and they're going off in different directions.
So you want to know something funny, Sheevaun? That this is really awesome. I think I found your business soulmate. Because that response, I've been interviewing a bunch of people. I interviewed a guy named Samir. Samir is the SVP of Sales and Marketing at Solvay, a chemicals company. Mm-hmm. And his first feedback to me was, the thing that resonated the most was, who was the one that was talking about the mission control? Because he uses that metaphor with his executive leadership, the entire executive team, to explain what they're doing. And he's got this broken down into like different kinds of rockets and different delivery models. He's extended it into his, he's extended that metaphor into how they segment, different rocket types to put different loads in. It was so precise. I was like, man, I got to get you two together. Isn't that amazing?
That's awesome. I love that.
Isn't it cool? Yeah. Is it? So I'm just like, so, and I guess more commonality, common thread. Doug, he's in Houston.
No.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
So maybe I can get you guys together. At any rate, I think that's so cool, and that's the magic of serendipity. Okay, so the next person that I'd love to know is what your favorite question was and why. Imogen, what was your favorite question and why?
I was worried that we'd all have the same questions, and I did absolutely love that one, Sheevaun, as well. But mine was the stock. If it was a stock, would you buy it? And there's a couple of reasons I loved that. One was because it's very personal, right, as a reaction, but it also senses for right now, in the situation we're in right now, under these pandemic conditions, but also long term. But I also made me think and reflect on, through the sort of life cycle of building a sales enablement department, would I buy my stock? And it's such a great question to say, am I doing enough? Am I thinking strategically enough? Is my business within a business doing the right thing? And so I really like that one. That resonated well with me.
Awesome. Okay. Doug, what was your favorite question and why?
Who is the customer of sales enablement? Because it gives us a perspective. I saw a lot of commonality in here, but it also helps us think about who is the real customer of sales enablement. And I personally think it sits much further up the chain than a lot of people answered. But all in all, it gives us insight on what people are thinking about, who they're having to respond to. And I think sort of related to that is, is it tied back to who funds me and who cares about what I'm doing? Or is it just we have you here because we have to have a sales enablement function? But I think who the customer of sales enablement was my favorite.
Excellent. So reactions, what were your reactions to each other? Sheevaun?
I loved Imogen's talk about the stock. I haven't thought about it that way. I mean, I read the question and I thought, okay, that's cool. But it'd be interesting to go back and to ask my own team, right? If we were a stock, would you buy us? And then the ultimate customer, that was interesting, Doug, because that was the one. My answer to that, whenever anybody asks me that, is that it is actually our buyers, the people that buy from us, our actual customers, because if they're not buying, then our purpose isn't around. And so I see as enablement as being part of a business that helps people stay focused on the two things that are really, really important from a revenue perspective, which is increasing performance, reducing attrition, right? Especially as enablement, we enable all these people. Let's keep them. So what do we do? How do we do to make sure we keep them, get them what they need, and then the customers buy from us? They're the ultimate stakeholder.
Awesome. Doug?
I think what you what Sheevaun just said earlier about mission control, if enablement were a business, what would it be? It's mission control. I know that when I responded to this, I talked about it being more consultative on that side, because that's sort of the background that I have. I'm a more consultative seller, purpose driven, but that was something about that just struck me, Sheevaun. So I'm just impressed with that question. I think with regard to Imogen's response on the stock, I thought that one was really interesting too, because there were a lot of people who are going, yeah, it's on the rise, but I'm going to short it because I'm going to put my money somewhere else. So you get some insight there, but the idea is, are we, if we were a business, are we a business people would trade in, invest in, and support, and can we create that? I think there's a lot of people out there that are doing sales enablement privately, but not necessarily in a public business that's traded on. That's just a great way of assessing where people think the value of sales enablement is.
What was awesome is in our session that was actually just yesterday with the sales leaders, Skip actually admitted, he said, I got to tell you, I thought that was the stupidest question, who are your customers, how obvious it was. And then I felt like a jerk reading through it because people were so all over the place. Oh my gosh, people aren't getting the fundamentals right. And right. I think that's pretty interesting, is how often, why not just answer some simple questions? And if we can answer the simple questions, move on. Why do we reject asking the simple question? I think that's an interesting phenomenon. Imogen, what were your reactions to the other people's favorite question?
Oh, yes, I mean, I similarly love this mission control idea. The customer one is really powerful because, to your point, it's very simple, and thinking about it simply is very hard. So we're encouraged now already to start thinking about sort of subsecting our customers, right? Are we sales manager enablers? Are we revenue enablers? How do we think about subsecting it? But actually, ultimately, Sheevaun's right. If we can make our sellers successful in making our buyers successful, can we blend that and think about that as our overall customer? So, I mean, you're not going to be surprised by this, Scott, because I spent so much time sort of with you at Forrester, but I think about the customer conversation is almost the product we're developing. And I think that's the customer interaction point, right? The buyer and the seller, and that moment in time has to be where we drive value. So yeah, the customer question is fantastic because it makes you reflect back on who you're actually enabling and what you're actually empowering.
Amen to that, Imogen. I think you were getting to that, Scott. It's that conversation that happens between a salesperson or a sales team and their customer is ultimately what we are trying to facilitate in the most productive and valuable way for both us as a company and them as a company. They're an entity and we need to be profitable. They need to be successful. That's what we're trying to make happen.
Right. And I think
that's the ultimate breakdown that a lot of sales enablement folks have, is that they're thinking about it from a tactical inside the walls of the castle instead of what do the townspeople need. I think get outside the wall. Be strategic.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that. I see that our sales organizations are bombarded to talk about us, our products, our services, what we do, how many stocking sites we have, how many customers we have, and they get that from our own company, and that the sales enablement function has to work to fragment that kind of mentality and focus more on the customer. So it's almost as if that companies are inflicted with this disease of productitis. Productitis exists in all the product groups. It exists even in finance. It exists in how you report to the street. What your products and services are. The burden required to synthesize all this information and get it back into a customer perspective is massive because no one owns it. So I think that's really a theme that I'm hearing across all of you guys. How would you guys react to that?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
completely. And I think we need to go beyond just working with our, siloed departments that we were talking about earlier to help them see this client conversation, but actually really bring it to life for them. So the marketing teams who are creating fantastic content about how big, bright, beautiful, wonderful a product or service is, miss the point that at the beginning of the sales process, for the first 3 or 4 stages of most funnels, all we care about is pain, motivation, change, driving that complexity through. And it's only at the end when they've decided to work with us that we tell them they're right and it's big and it's beautiful and it's consistent and we can do it. So yeah, I think it helps to be a design point for how we work with our colleagues across our companies.
Excellent. So we have the last question, and then we have a wrap up. We may lose, unfortunately, Sheevaun. So I'm going to let everybody know beforehand if she's got to go. We've asked her to just leave. She's got a appointment with our CEO. So we gotta definitely let that happen. So there's, no other scheduling thing. When the boss says I want to meet, the boss will be met with. So I'm going to ask Sheevaun out of sequence here, the next question. So what I'd like you guys to do is imagine you're taking out your crystal balls. Okay? You got your crystal ball. This is your opportunity to be a soothsayer. Sheevaun, what do you see as the future of sales enablement from here?
I think the future is that the word sales will be dropped from it. What we're discovering is that the challenges that we have and we've been asked to solve in companies, like content issues and go-to-market messaging and, making sure everybody understands customer needs and storytelling, goes way beyond sales. The whole company, especially now that people cannot just go visit you or you cannot go visit somebody, Everybody in the company is a seller, a supporter of the customer. And in order to be able to support the customer properly, you have to be able to talk about, why does the company exist? Why do our products exist? Why do you need us? Why do we understand what your issues are? It goes way beyond sales. So I can see enablement becoming a much broader practice within insightful organizations who really get it, who see the value of it, which is part of our job, is to show them the value.
Yes, I love that you
Yeah,
have that.
love
Part
it.
of our job is to do that. Okay, next crystal ball. Imogen, dust off that crystal ball. Take a good look at it. Tell us what you see in the future.
Wow, you want me to add to what Sheevaun just said?
No, I want you to give your own one, and then we can add and piggyback on.
Okay, so I have a slightly left field thought about this. I really hope that no company ever needs sales enablement ever again.
Wow.
This should be an instinctive, well, not instinctive, but it should be an end-to-end understanding about empowering our ability to get out into the marketplace and into those seller conversations. So 30 years from now, because it's not moving fast and we are behind the curve in Europe, I would love it if there was a distinct part of the competency of the COO and the CRO, perhaps even the CEO, is to understand how to align these different parts of the organizations, these spinning cogs, so they constantly think end to end about how they spend their budget and their internal thinking processes and resources to drive that conversation. So there you go.
Said a different way, and I'm putting words in your mouth. Spit out what doesn't fit, Imogen.
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying is that sales enablement is a temporary role. To piggyback on the metaphor I guess we're all using is rockets, it's a stage booster to ultimately get us to a point where organizations are more holistic and operate like an ecosystem in support of customers.
I wish it's a temporary role. I suspect it isn't, and it will just manifest in new and more interesting ways as we move forward. But ultimately, I would love to be able to break apart some of the great things that we do in sales enablement and know that everybody else is also doing those in the same way, and that rising tide is lifting all ships in a company to help drive success.
Doug, are you like me and just want to buy in, and maybe it's because of the British accent? She sounds way smarter than the rest of us.
Absolutely.
Is that going on
Absolutely.
with you right now?
Yeah, you know, I'm from
Texas.
I'm from Texas. Nobody thinks we know anything down here because we've got such a strange dialect.
Right, and your big claim to fame of smartness was Enron, and that didn't turn out too well, right?
Oh, hush.
That was brutal.
Unfortunately, I got to tell you, I was in consulting and lived through that one. I had responsibility for the Houston area in consulting at Novell when Enron fell apart. And boy, it took the legs out from underneath a lot of people. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I hate to be digging up past traumas there, Doug.
That's
so
okay.
Let's
No
dust that
problem.
off here, and let's bring out your crystal ball. Tell us where you see sales enablement heading.
Well, I'm not going to comment on the other two right at the moment, but I'm going to say that I think sales enablement almost becomes its own business unit like finance or something else in the future. The reason is because it's so integral or so pivotal to a lot of different things that happen, to the point where I think it, I guess this almost is a wish or a hope for, it's aspirational, that it reports up to the COO or the CEO, because that sort of reinforces the idea that Sheevaun was talking about of, hey, you know, it's not sales enablement, it's just enablement. I mean, I long ago dropped the sales out of my title. I just said I'm Global Enablement Director. That's what I do. So, but I kind of see the idea that Imogen's getting to, and the idea that it is just like a natural component of what the CEOs, COOs, and CROs all think about. And I guess this kind of goes back to maybe what, you know, like Dr. Howard Dover is doing at UT Dallas, the idea that sales enablement or enablement itself and having that is part of the curricula that we teach in every college, if it's in the business space or something else like that. So I guess that's kind of the way I'd like to see it, and that's aspirationally what I'd like to see happen. That's what I want it to happen. That's what I'm trying to support.
Sheevaun, before you go, do you want to comment on Doug or Imogen? And we'll wrap up with Doug and Imogen from here on out.
I think we're all saying the same thing. I think it is, it's having a much broader, much more global view of what it means to be the corporate communicators, the corporate, the center of all the various cogs, as Imogen said, right? We're the ones in the middle that are keeping all the cogs going and making sure they're communicating with each other and keeping the focus in the right direction. And it's a much more strategic, much larger, much more global view that needs to be taken in order for companies to be successful now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sheevaun. We're going to turn the show over now to Dr. Brian Lambert. So Brian has been patiently organizing all of our different thoughts. He's going to ask us to clarify and agree on certain things. Obviously, Sheevaun, you're going to have to drop off. Thank you so much for participating. Brian, prioritize her feedback first.
Yeah, and I just have one quick question, and it has to do with this, the integrated view that we had a bit of a dangling discussion around. When you think about mission control, and you guys are all talking about the interconnected nature of sales enablement, I'd just like to pull that thread more. One of the things that I'd like to just get your thoughts on before you go is the importance of skills required in this sales enablement role.
I think the biggest skill you need to have for that is an understanding that you have to be empathetic of the folks that you're dealing with, and that it's all about curiosity in what their roles are, what they believe their roles are, and how you believe they're all integrated into the ultimate goal, which is to help your customers, right? And it's help people to understand and actually put their own wording around their roles to make sure that they get it, but it's to transform the company to recognize that who the real stakeholder is and to get their view much bigger and help them see bigger beyond the horizon.
Oh, I like that. So your definition then of impacting is looking out and abroad, interconnecting, thinking about others, having empathy for them, and making it relevant to them.
Realizing everybody is trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
It's just making them understand that everybody is doing the right thing. They just need to coordinate it.
Yep.
Right. Yep. How about you, Imogen, with regard to this concept of interconnect thinking?
Yeah, I love what Sheevaun said, and I'll add to that. I never thought about sales enablement as a sort of linear process or a set of tactics. I think it's a really holistic spinning wheel of things you have to prioritize for the company and the market that you're working in. So you can't just improve and simplify the sales process and say, go do it. You have to create a coaching culture that can pick that up. You have to make sure that they're doing it to the right markets and the right clients and reflecting the problems those people have. So being able to think really big picture and raise your head, I'm going to steal that from Sheevaun, but also be able to break that down into the component parts and help people come together across the organization to understand how they are all part of driving that forward, and that's a good thing. That to me is how you try and how I try and bring a sort of some level of systems thinking to what I do and to sales enablement departments. That is how I think about it. It's got lots of tenants, it's got lots of pillars, but it's not linear. You have to be thinking ahead of the game and actually helping your CRO or CSO go beyond their next quarter or even the end of the coming year, right? Help them think 2 or 3 years out to make ready for that and be proactive for what that might look like.
Great. Thanks so much for that. How about you, Doug? What do you think about systems thinking or skills in that way?
Well, and this goes back to the way I sort of introduced myself. I'm an architect by professional training, by degree and everything else. And absolutely at the heart of any piece of architecture you see in the world, there are systems all through it. And an architect himself is not the guy that knows how to run the electrical or the HVAC or the structural parts of everything. We have a basic understanding. And so as a sales enablement person, we're a little bit like an architect in that we're able to understand broad systems and how they interact and how they support each other, but then we can blend them together with the aesthetics of material, content, whatever you want to call it, and that begins to wrap it in the kind of presentation that's satisfying to the customer. And so we have to be systems thinkers, but we have to be big picture systems thinker, understanding all of those pieces. I mentioned this, Scott, the other day. I said a lot of people talk about the buyer's journey. What does it go through the process and everything? All well and good, but it's also a little bit about the seller's journey. What do they have to deal with? What are the processes that they have to go through? How do we simplify that? How do we message that to them, help them? There's all the different pieces that work together to help that salesperson or sales team be successful in front of that customer to solve the customer's problem. And that's really why I think systems is important, but it's not systems in that I just got to make sure it's all tactical. That's an operations kind of thing. It's an orchestration. It's what it really boils down to.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. And all three of you guys we're talking about the words like integrated, big picture, idea, simplification. You just injected, Doug, architecture. So I wanted to pull that thread some more as one of my takeaways. So I'll segue into my recap here. And that's going to be point number one. It's this idea of what you guys are all talking about and is going beyond. So going beyond what you're currently thinking. There's a big future orientation in this discussion, but there's also a real-time right now orientation of thinking more broadly, thinking more like an architect, integrated big picture about all the pieces. And what strikes me about that is those are not terms and those are not words used day to day, in my view, in sales right now. But we hear words like go, 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 close, action, activity. Did you do it? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? But this conversation to me is really standing out as it's about integration, helping people win, helping people think, helping people understand, relating to them, have empathy, getting outside of your own siloed view and becoming more interrelated and interconnected. So that's my first point, is going beyond what you currently think. What do you guys think of that, Imogen and Doug?
I like that. I mean, that's a good summation, good way of looking at it.
Yeah, me too. I like it, Brian.
Okay. The next one is, before that, is a great value conversation. So my second point is you've got to really know and then believe in your value. And what you guys talked about there was not the value of your widget that you're producing, or not the value of your project plan, or even the value of yourself, so to speak. I am valuable. Of course, everybody's valuable. But really, it's this idea of know your value to sales conversations, of interactions between buyers and sellers. That's your value. So newsflash in there, I'm going to inject some newsflash. You guys actually coined a new disease. A new disease was discovered on this podcast called productitis. And productitis was diagnosed because of this idea of the conversation and how hard it is to have that conversation. So that's my second point, is know and believe in your value to sales conversations. Say it out loud. I am valuable to sales conversations. Our team impacts sales conversations, and we're going to fight productitis. What do you guys think of that, Doug and Imogen?
I think productitis is something that needs to not be a pandemic and needs to be stopped. But I just one quick reflection, Brian. I've always tried to be both the difficult position of both pushing the power of sales enablement and trying to be invisible in the process of enabling our selling organization, because they have to think that it's come from them. It's just that we've empowered it and made it happen for them. The last job I took, I said, you're going to be in a totally different place in 2 years' time, and it will have happened so gradually and so gently you won't know that it will have happened to you, but you'll reflect and see what's changed. And I just think that if something lands noisily or drives complexity, then I've done it wrong. So productitis would be an example of doing it badly, I think.
Really good point. Thinking in terms of products tends to put us in a tactical approach to things, and it's about blending or melding ways of utilizing products to solve problems. The one thing that at MicroFocus they've heard me say over and over and over, it's solve the problem, not sell the product. But start with the problem, you'll sell the product. If you start with the product trying to find a problem, the chance of success drops in half at least. And so it's just that whole idea that you got to get it all blended together.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. And so we've got this idea of looking beyond, blending together from point one, this idea of fighting productitis to drive value and be valuable to sales conversations, which leads me to my third point. That's a great segue, Doug. It's this idea of the blending. You guys talked about a lot about blending tactical and strategic, and or in this case, the customer view or just the views of others, and blending those together. And what that creates is not what you guys didn't talk about, friction and confrontation. You guys actually talked about opportunity for learning. And so that's my third point, is blending tactical and strategic is not about one or the other. It's about creating an opportunity for learning. And that's that two-way learning that you guys talked about so much at the beginning. So that's my third point. Blending creates an opportunity for learning. And so do both, blend and learn. So what do you guys think of that summarization of that early part of the conversation, which seems like forever ago?
Does seem like a little bit back there, but I'll be honest with you. I think the real value of what you just said there is blending and learning. And I'm going to go back to what I said. It's the collaborative nature of what we do. This also sort of leans back on what Scott and Imogen have talked about. Scott sort of coined the phrase VP of broken things, 10 years ago, whenever it was. It's been a while. That's kind of where we are. Maybe it's not VP, but we almost are always in the middle, and we can see things broken in a lot of different places. It's our responsibility to listen to, learn, share, and improve. It's just a continuous cycle of improvement.
And I think we blend to elevate, right? This isn't about creating a grey of compromise that will fly with enough people that we can push it across the line. This is about bringing my spinning cog analogy back again, bringing those people together to show just how far they can accelerate what they're trying to do, because we are all trying to do the right thing, which is what Sheevaun said. We are all trying to drive profitable growth and help our sellers and our buyers. But the sales enablement group so often are the people who, pour oil on the troubled water of friction by showing people how we're all at the chunked up level, all trying to do the same thing and all trying to do it really, really well and support each other through that.
Yeah, that's great. So there you go, Scott. There's the three things we discovered on this call: the idea of blending and learning, and the value of the conversations, and then going beyond. And we actually discovered a new disease called productitis. So I think this has been a productive podcast. So back over to you.
Excellent. So before we get into what we've learned, I do have one question for Imogen. So Imogen,
okay.
I wouldn't do this. I'm only putting you on the spot because this is how we roll way back when. But putting you a little bit on the spot, what resonated a lot with me is you said, hey, sales enablement has to be invisible. How does a sales enablement department get the resources and you get paid what you should get paid for making that kind of change if you're invisible? How do you articulate nothing? Like, visible is not visible. How do you articulate the value of not being seen?
I mean, I think you're either opening the how do you measure the success of sales enablement kettle or not. But I think as far as the C-suite and the CROs and my SVPs of sales are concerned, I'm absolutely in their faces and very, very visible. And I'm showing them, or not just me, what I'm doing, but what my team are doing to drive improved productivity, improved sales process, velocity, volume, etc. But as far as the sales people are concerned, their world is just easier, simpler, better organized, with the right content at the right time to help them have the conversations they need to have. So it's an enormous amount of facilitation, trying not to take them out of the field or trying not to put them in the classroom. Not that we're doing that right now anyway, but trying to make sure it's all on the job and incremental changes towards something that we've already told them is good. We've already shown them what's going to be changed. Yeah. And I've done sales processes in every company that I've worked with and a lot of clients. And when it launches, and launch is a strange word, we always want the, oh yeah, of course, reaction. Not the, oh my God, I don't understand, I don't do it like that. So that's the sort of invisibility, right? You're all over the C-suite, you're in there in those executive meetings, but as far as the sales managers and the frontline salespeople are concerned, it's very subtle and it just feels empowering.
Yeah. So I think there's two lenses of that, right? So one is once you have the job, how you manage it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at how you get a new job in the first place. And let me break this down to extreme simplicity. What I heard you say is sales enablement is, hey, management, give us more money. In return for that more money, we're going to give you less stuff. And as a result, you're going to have better results, right? So I want more money to give you less things. By the way, they're conditioned to buy things, staff, headcount, deliverables, spending, activity. And you're saying, I'm going to take all that away and simplify it. And as a result of that, you're going to get outcomes. Where's an example of where we've sold something like that, where you've bought something like that before?
It's a really great question. I think we're talking about margins though, right? If I'm in the business of sales, maybe the business of sales, for every dollar they spend on their selling organization and the infrastructure and the ecosystem that supports that, they need to be getting 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, they can set the outcome of what they're looking for that, and I'll show them how to get there.
Yeah. So to give full transparency, what I'm starting to worry about, I'm going live on a webinar sharing findings in 19 days. This is May 1st. So part of what I'm at is what is the business problem that created the VP of Broken Things in the first place? How do we illuminate this gap that Kunal mentioned? And how do we help business executives see the same thing that the finance people are seeing, or that you see, in the bowels of the organization? And to me, when you break it down, that's really what our value proposition is. Give us more money or redirect some of the spending that's already happening. We're going to create a lot less of things. And as a result of less, you're going to get more. That is a hard case to make on its surface, but it makes a hell of a lot of sense in context, right? So that's something I'm wrestling with. So please sleep on it. If you have any ideas in the morning, please give me ideas. I would really, really appreciate that.
And as the reporter here, I'm like, Scott just gave us a news flash, but then we've got to cut to commercial. So.
Yeah, right. Okay, so going back, right? I guess maybe that was a commercial. My commercial is an appeal for help.
Yeah,
that's
one to noodle on for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, here's our wrap up. Imogen, what did you learn?
Wow. I mean, I'm still digesting most of the things I learned. I am delighted to hear Doug and Sheevaun think about things in the same way as I do. And I learned that the idea of focusing on the client conversation is the right one. Keep going with that, because it is the way to make a difference here.
Awesome. Doug, what did you learn?
I learned there's still lots of opportunity to help people understand sales enablement better. The results of the survey showed the variety of opinion and perspective, and the nice thing about it is we can learn from that, because just like Imogen and Sheevaun have shared some things, I'm going, oh yeah, that's really great, and that's the important thing. Now, can we use that as a way for us to be able to share our point of view? Not, I disagree with Imogen or Sheevaun on something, but here's what I think about that. Here's how I see that happening. And then we can have that discussion. And that's what Sales Enablement Society is really all about. It's like, let's have a dialogue and figure out the better way to do it. We all learn from each other. A long time ago, I heard somebody talk about steel sharpens steel. And that's, it's our steel against each other just has to be able to be used in a way that it improves all of our approach to everything. We learn from each other, and it's just such an insightful survey. And I'm just so happy that the 69 other people, other than I, who responded to it, took the time to respond to it, because there was some really good material in there.
Excellent. So with that, we're at a wrap. Thank you so much. Hopefully, Insider Nation, you got a lot of value out of this as much as I did. Please take the time to listen to all of our panels. What I'd challenge you to do is really concentrate on where there's themes. What do the sales enablement experts say in the language that they use? How's it different? How's it the same as what the sales leaders are looking for, or the practitioners who are in the middle of making it work, the connective glue, if you will? What do they look like? Because ultimately, one of our challenges is how we communicate the value of all this stuff. So with that, we're gonna wrap it up. I do have a couple of requests. Please go to InsideSE.com. Click on the registration, register for the webinar. It's on 5/19. It's 11 o'clock Eastern time, and we're going to be able to provide the synthesis of all of these different things: the survey, the COVID response, 10 years in the field, interviews like this, panels like this. How in the world are we going to put it all together? I don't know. I just know we will, because this is the way things work when you challenge yourselves and have people like Imogen and Doug and Sheevaun helping you along the way.
Thanks for joining us. To become an insider and amplify your journey, make sure you've subscribed to our show. If you have an idea for what Scott and Brian can cover in a future podcast, or have a story to share, please email them at engage@insidese.com. You can also connect with them online by going to insidese.com, following them on Twitter, or sending them a LinkedIn request.